Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to speak in support of this amendment. Revenue sharing. It's an agreement that started in the 1930s after the end of Prohibition. Local governments agreed to take a fraction of our state sales tax in return for limiting their own power to tax residents. Breaking this agreement, as the state of Michigan has done for nearly 20 years, does not come without a huge cost to our communities. Think about what our cities, townships, and counties provide: streets and sidewalks, streetlights and parks, senior centers and libraries, the things that contribute to a community's sense of place and quality of life. Local governments pay the men and women who also work to protect our lives, our first responders. While it's not the only service they provide, public safety makes up about half of a municipality's budget, providing police and fire, paramedics and dispatchers, the ones charged with keeping the peace, with chasing down bad guys, with rushing into danger, with saving lives. Since the state started leaning on revenue sharing to plug holes in its own budget, Michigan has lost 22% of our law enforcement positions and 30% of our firefighter positions. We can only guess how many lives might have been saved, how much property preserved, how many crimes prevented had we had the benefit of thousands of first responder positions for the last 18 years. Besides eliminating thousands and thousands of positions, by shorting local communities of revenue sharing, we have seen public employers, your local police or fire department, have trouble finding young people who want to fill the positions, those rare positions once they do become available. Nobody wants to work these important jobs because the pay and benefits are just too low. So the police officers, corrections officers, firefighters, and dispatchers find themselves forced to work mandatory overtime. All the while, they rely on outdated or dilapidated equipment to save your life or to protect themselves. Department resources are stretched beyond the limit, morale deteriorates. It's a terrible cycle that previous legislatures have created and that we will perpetuate if we do not restore some of the sales tax revenue that local governments are entitled to. Whether it's tiny rural townships, wealthy suburbs, or urban centers, every single community in Michigan has been hurt. But the pain is more severe for some communities. Some communities can rely on their residents' willingness and ability to pay even more in the form of local millages for their parks and police and firefighters. But in areas of Michigan where residents are already hurting and facing hardship, they can't afford additional taxes. That is, more taxes on top of the sales tax that we already pay for local services. As a result, these struggling municipalities have experienced cuts and more cuts until their first responders' ranks are a skeleton crew. The fact is that local governments have been forced to reckon with a truth that some of us in state government haven't quite accepted. Infrastructure and services like public safety cost money. And even if the state doesn't give their partners at the local level their share of revenue, the bills must still be paid. So municipalities have a choice where both options are pretty terrible. Go back to their residents with a plea for higher property taxes, or look on helplessly as service suffers. Public safety suffers. Make no mistake, one way or the other, we will all end up paying more for less. And to add insult to injury, the same people responsible for putting local units of government in this no-win situation will lambaste them for raising property taxes. Speaking of winning, or winning at losing, it's true that Michigan has the dubious distinction of having disinvested in its local governments more than any other state in the United States. Since 2002, Sault Ste. Marie has lost $10 million. The city of Portage has lost $20.3 million. This city that serves as home to our capital, Lansing, has lost more than $101 million in revenue sharing. The city of Detroit has lost $1.5 billion, with a B, dollars since 2002. And remember, this is their money. It's not a grant or a gift. It's money that rightfully belongs in our local communities. While it would be impractical, if not impossible, to fully restore lost revenue sharing, that's a total of $8.6 billion that has been unfairly withheld since 2002. The executive recommendation would improve the lot of many communities all over the state. It would bolster our local communities' ability to protect their citizens, us. This is one of government's most basic and fundamental duties, after all, one that affects and benefits every single one of us. Residents of every Michigan community, rural or urban, rich or poor, we deserve better. The first responders who put their lives on the line every day deserve better, and we can do better. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you.
Questions on the adoption of the amendment? The clerk will open the board. The amendment is not adopted.